We've seen the models revealed. Now let's see what data sheets are the greenest and the meanest with the green tide. My boys are here. Let's get stuck in, lads. It's time. We can see the data sheets. We've already been enjoying the models. Now let's get stuck in and have some fungus for thoughts. Now, first off, let's make sure we're enjoying these models as they are. Let's not let the meta rule us and dictate all of our feelings and how we are towards the game going forward. There's still a lot left on the table to be seen. Therefore, we're going to just enjoy the models as well as have some realistic critiques, some expectations, some positives, a lot of positives, really, and just general thoughts, right? So we're going to have a good time with this. We do know that unlike everybody else that's going to see their rules come the reveal date, is that we are going to be the ones that are going to get a first incoming codex, which means these rules that we are looking at today can reflect or show what might come with next edition. But in reality, we don't actually know that. All we can know is the support stuff, the leader stuff. Keywords will transition over, maybe some of the data sheet abilities. But as for the full data sheets themselves on how the orcs run, there's still a lot to see. But we're gonna have the codex and one of the soonest in the first two. Now, also, points impact our true expectations. Once we've seen the points, we'll know have the real expectations for these models. So regardless of how much we enjoy the combos or are looking forward to them or taking happiness in their utility options and uniqueness, we still want to see the points to know exactly where everything ends up. And then, like I said, we haven't seen the addition, so there's still a lot of meat left on the bone here regardless. So I'm going to have fun with this one, as we're going to start off with, of course, the hot commodity, the big green balls. Whoa. So the Warboss has gotten a bit of a glow up, which matches his quite large base size and model. We know he's going to go up to a 50mm base size. So it is important that he, at least in most of our opinions, that at least something reflected that on his data sheet. What we do know is his base stat line, so his movement, toughness, save, wounds, leadership, OC, all that stayed the same. Right, GW just kept all that stuff the same, which makes sense when we're ending, going to just see some of the rules going forward, and this is what's going to come out with the first box set rule starting the edition. We don't know if that can still change again with the codex, but it's nice for us to have to keep in mind, that way we're not learning too much stuff all over, right? Imagine if you had to learn your rules and all your guys' base stats all over again, right, in the beginning. So another thing here is, whenever we're looking at these data sheets, when we're looking at their weapons, what their units compositions are, their options for their war gear, it's completely limited and restricted to just what's in the box set. These are press mold fit models. That means it's pretty much being delegated to you what you can take and what these models will have. They're not going to have the same variety and options as the box sets will that you buy independently. For example, this specific model, where we've seen the actual individual box, shout out to Red Ones Goes Faster, where he had the attack squig, he had the power claw. So when people are asking, where's the power claw, where's my attack squig, where's all the little cool gizmos and gadgets, in a push fit start edition box set, it's going to be delegated to you what you're going to play for the ease of the play in the game. But that doesn't mean it's bad. So let's move to the ranged weapons. So for the ranged weapons, we have the custom shooter, rapid fire 2, 18, 4 attacks, ballistic skill 5, strength 4, 0 AP, 1 a shot. Not too impressive, but if you are going to be one of them gets that's going to have interest in running assault, because now all your boys can essentially have options to shoot. It comes as a passive buff if you pick more DACA as like a support enhancement, detachment, then you can actually get this off. Then you have the actual thing I'm excited about is the custom chopper. So no longer being called a big chopper, or maybe this is different to a big chopper, but he does have cleave 1. It is 6 attacks, which is, I'm just going to compare it to the big chopper, 1 more attack than the current big chopper. Weapon skill 2, strength 8, which is currently the same thing. But the real difference is the AP -2, then flat 2 damage. Now, this actually does contest with, the power claw regardless, because now it's same AP from what we know. And you're actually not hitting at 3+. That's interesting as well. You get an additional attack, but you also get cleave. So you can end up really blending people, because if we look at our data sheet abilities, they're the same. So it's really easy to know. We know he's leader. He gets +1 to hit rolls on the melee weapons. And then when the WAAAGH is active, he gets +4 attacks. So that means when you're looking at the custom Choppa, he gives up to 11 attacks on the wall. And then whatever cleave happens with cleave pops off. So, that's a bunch of attacks that's going to really give enemies a big run for their money, for regardless of if it's a mid-level elite infantry model, or if it's some kind of mounted unit, some kind of beast or swarm, or let's see, beast, or really just beast. I was going to say swarm. Who cares about swarms? But regardless, I like that because sometimes we didn't actually have a great attack profile even at that. So doesn't mean it's bad because it's coming with the box, and it actually gives you some options when you're thinking about the power claw. So I'm pretty excited about that going forward. We do know what he leads is just boys, breaker boys, and then knobs. So very it's only 3, which is fine because, like I said, this is just coming with the initial box. So we have yet to see if any of these units are changing, like I said, into the codex. But I'm pretty excited about this model. Love that he actually got a pretty solid out of the box starting weapon that can test with the power claw, that gives me a reason to enjoy him and play this model, even when he comes out of the box, and not just be worried about where my power claw is at. So I think overall he's a really big winner, but I think the next get we're going to look at is also quite the winner, as the Big Boss. So points, of course, like I said, with the Warboss are going to be determinant. He getting a little bigger, maybe he's going to go up to 80 points, which really gives us questions on where this Big Boss lies. Once that Warboss is slain, this is the get that moves up the food chain. So his base movement 6, toughness 5, save 4. He does not have an invuln. That's the difference between him and a Warboss. And he's 5 wounds instead of 6. That's the difference between him and a Warboss. And then leadership as well is 7. So pretty static with just the rest of the other orcs kind of right there between a Knob and a Warboss, which is what we like to see. 1 OC. Then he moves to Slugga, which is now considered close quarters. Kind of cool. Just a little pistol Slugga. Is two-handed Big Choppa is less impressive than our current Big Choppa, or about the same as the current Big Choppa on a Knob, right? Because the current Big Choppa on the Knob is strength 8 or 7. I think it's 7 right now. Mech will look right now. He gets 5 attacks, which is a respectable amount. I was so frustrated this edition whenever I would see orc characters with 4 attacks, for example, like the Warboss outside of the wall. So really at least happy he at least has 5 hits on 3s. Would have still liked to see him on 2s, but that's cool. Strength 7, -1, 2 damage. So he doesn't have the same elite output, but he does have a respectable output, still getting up to 6 attacks on the wall plus cleave. He has the fun part that we're all happy to see is he has sustain. So now we have access to sustain outside of just playing Warhorde all the time, or depending on the detachment to have some kind of strat to give access to it, which is something we love to see as orc war bosses, that we can go into all these attachments that we're going to have access to, synergizing these detachments, and then still being able to bring sustain along the way to go with our favorite units that really need it. He does also get something else that we don't see too much on our characters, is +1 to charge rolls. So this guy actually acts as a multi-layered kind of Swiss Army knife diversity tool, because he's not all about the damage output, though he supplements that and helps it out on the unit by himself and with his passive ability of sustain 1, but he's also helping you get into the fight, which is going to synergize with other detachments. Like if you have Green Tide and you utilize a stratagem for that, for the additional buffs to your charges. If you have re-rolls from the Breaker Boys, then you're going to get the +1 charge on that to help you get the Breaker Boys to a better fight that they want to get into. You also have him able to go with boys and knobs as well. So just like the Warboss on his options. Overall, he's awesome utility. You kind of compare him to a lieutenant. If we expect the Warboss maybe to go up a little, maybe, hopefully not too much. If he goes up 5 points, hopefully he stays at 75. But if he goes up to 80, then it makes this guy more of an option, as long as he remains under 70, we want to say 65, excuse me. So hopefully around 65 points we want this guy to be. We don't know though how everything's going to look next edition, right? The GW is going to make everything cost more points as a whole. They haven't had that pattern, right? They usually drop stuff points and you make you buy more models. So we'll see. But we'd like to see him around 65 points. If we can get him around 65 points, it makes room for, to choose enhancements. If you want cunning but brutal on your unit, I guess you're already in Warhorse, you have sustain, so you don't want that. Throw that out there. But a different detachment where you want a certain kind of enhancement, you can still use him as, if he's cheaper, still bring sustain along the way and other buffs that will help you get into a fight. So I'm pretty excited about that guy. I think he's a great option outside the Warboss, and he helps with synergies and buffs to your models that orcs normally don't have that much access to. So great multi-tool, great addition to our codex as a whole. I'm very, very excited for him. More models like this and more options for utility is exactly what orcs needed and we want to see. So probably my number one winner here in my heart, just because of that. Then we go to the Bannernob, to be decided, right? I wanted to put that because a lot of people are still, well, I miss my old Bannernob, but there's some good stuff that we're seeing here on the data sheet. And if he comes out at the right point cost, he can actually be an awesome addition to our codex because of the amount of units he can support attached to. So that's what I'm really excited to see on here. But look at this data sheet, movement 6, toughness 5, 4 up armor save, and then a 5 up invuln. So kind of like knob armor, unless boys all went up to a 4 up armor save. I don't know that. So I'm just looking. He's a knob. He has a 4 up armor base. Therefore, 5 up invuln. Then he goes 4 wounds. Somewhat respectable, as we're going to see some other characters on here have even less than 4 wounds, which is outrageous. Leadership 7 would have been a cool buff to see him actually be able to be leadership 6, but we do know that he has support, which means chances are he'll be a Warboss anyways and be able to go maybe get down to leadership 6. But I think that'd be another cool buff to make these guys a little bit more appealing, make him a better leadership himself. But something that he does have himself, unlike current banners, is that he is 6 OC himself. So instead of giving +1 to each unit, he's 6 OC, which greatly increases his importance to the unit as the individual, which means, one, he might draw somebody trying to precision him, but they usually won't because he's pretty cheap and trash. So it's going to be great to have him last standing on objectives with big OC bombing if you're playing with the Green Tide, because he does seem quite mob specific as we look over his utility abilities. So he has core support, unlike the other units that we looked at, which were leaders. He has a 5 up invuln at all times. So finally, you're not always made of paper mache the entire time you're just standing there on the field. Nice to see. And it's really good for when you're getting in those initial fights and skirmishes where when we do look at his support units, we'll see that, I can stick him onto units that I normally would want to use kind of early game to get in fights, make them a little tougher, hold down on objectives, and then force the enemy to commit further to me and draw out a proper wall. So whether he ends up being a part of your big obvious mob unit or he plays out on one of these support units is going to be the real question mark. That's why I called him to be decided. So 5 up invuln, which could draw cool early or late game activations, but during the wall he gives you +1 toughness. So that means the very obvious, well, I'm going to put him in something like Green Tide or put him in Freebooter Crew and have access to popping a wall multiple times per game where this unit stays at T6 the whole time into certain fights and stays the invuln. That way even before that I'm still pretty tough. Now you could also stick him on maybe some kind of knob brick if you really want to consider that. Some people, so that way you can actually fight for objectives. Generally not going to be considered because he himself has quite low output, right? He has a basic Choppa with 5 attacks, which is probably the real downside. I at least wanted him to be at strength 5, right? Because how are you messing up the fact that he's a knob, right? If you look at even a Flash Git strength or a knob at baseline, they're always at strength 5. That distinguishes them from a boy. That's why they're tougher. So I think even just that little sliver change of making his Choppa +1 strength would at least matching his name, right? So that's why it's more of a letdown than even just that it's basic, because I did expect him to have a basic weapon. I expect him to have a quite low cost. No banner bearer in the game is really that killy, but making him strength 5 as a proper knob would be freaking awesome. And then he can be strength 6 on the wall. He actually pulls out a little bit more good fights and last stands when he's there. But hey, GW ruined it. Well, we'll see if they go fixing it in the future if they notice. But The real kicker here is what he actually supports. Way more options, and now we have leaders for units that aren't either didn't have it before or now we have more. So we have boys, breaker boys, knobs. All right, we were obviously already had that earlier, but we have burner boys, which currently only have a Painboy as an option. Fantastic. So if this guy comes out at a proper point cost, then burner boys could be on the menu for giving them an invul and getting in early game fights alongside flash gets, who currently have no leader options or character that can be supporting them. So this is really awesome to see if for some reason we want to stick enhancements on this and put the flash kits in there, or just giving them a good 5-up invul so that they get in some fights and some firing lane. We could as well put them with Ludas. If for some reason we want to hold down objectives and take advantage of plunging fire, have good old C on there, retain our 5-up invul for return fire, and just hold our ground and not let people just move in and touch up on it. Who knows what people come up with this new edition, but options are nice to see. But of course, there's knobs, which knobs go along with side the Warboss means you're going to -1 to wound. Knobs are going to be T6, so they're going to be quite immune to small arms fire. And then they're also going to be a bit better into tougher stuff as well. And it's more of a breakpoint in combat a lot of the time, toughness 6, but there are certain anti-infantry weapons that are strength 6. So that is a very interesting breakpoint if you can get that with the built-in -1 to wound on your knobs as well. As for tank busters, not really sure, unless, like I said, you're going to hold an enhancement and try to play more of the mid game with it. Breaker boys might be more of an option, but that comes down to like, hey, can I endure an Overwatch now? Not sure about that because they're still quite a soft target from what we've seen, but we don't know what any of these data sheets look like in our codex. But likely the support ability and who's being supported will remain with this unit moving into the codex. So that's really what I want to point out and be excited about. To be decided on how important he is and how much he's used. Would like to see him around 50 points, hopefully at 50 points, to really make him even to be considered, because we have a lot of options now. Moving on to the Painboy. So though his model is beautiful, his little surgeon runt is beautiful, he himself has remained the same, which is debatable whether you're super excited about it or not. That's up to you. But we still like to see that he keeps his 5-up feel no pain. Now, he has movement 5, T5, 5-up save, so still no invuln, and he's 3 wounds, leadership 7, 1 OC. That was the disappointing factor to me, right? If you know me, you know that I'm like, yo, why the heck is the Painboy 3 wounds? That's nothing, right? Like we've seen, even the Bannernob has more wounds than him. So a little bit too soft sometimes to be taken and reliably taken out with precision, in my opinion. But it is what it is. Hopefully he comes down in points with this next edition. So we have Doc's Tool, which is still about the same: 3 attacks, weapon skill 4+, strength 9, -2 damage. That's what we expect the power claws. If they stay the same, maybe in the codex they change to be more impressive, maybe they don't. We have East Syringe, which is anti-infantry, extra attacks, precision. They cleaned up the wording so it's quite obvious there, which we're happy to see. Throw some mortal wounds on someone, up to D6 mortal wounds. His Grot Orderly still replenishes D3 bodyguards. And he still gives a 5-up feel no pain to the unit, and he does have the core support. So pretty much everything we expected, everything the same. Really what's cool is what he leads: boys, breaker boys, burner boys, ludas, knobs, and tank bustas. So I already mentioned earlier, you can put them with boys for the feel no pains, you can put it with knobs, and the Warboss in the same unit for -1 to wound, but instead of the knobs, they can actually have feel no pain as well, and then replenish knobs. So that's probably per point one of the better options. And the knobs with their built-in buff, if it remains the same, are more durable than something like a breakable unit, for example. So those are some of the options, but nothing that isn't different other than the fact that we can take knobs with the Warboss into this unit, or, for example, the Bigboss, right? So then we move to what I consider as kind of like the only loser, but of course, I know that we still have much to see with the Codex. Yeah, gotta call it as we see it. He was quite disappointing, but we know that they could definitely change right away when the book drops. But because it's just a box drop, this boy looking flat because he's a big old 50 mil base and he has pretty much the same exact offensive output. So he has Edbanger, precision, psychic, 1 attack, 4 ballistic skill, strength 6, -3, 1 damage. His utility did change a little bit. We'll talk about that, don't worry. And then his melee, 3 attacks, 3 plus, strength 8, -1, D3 damage. He can only lead boys. And he actually deadly demises. So that's a bit of a double sword, edge sword, because I kind of like it. It's hilarious, right? If someone goes to kill your weird boy and your weird boy blows up and takes him out with him, all right, I can stand on that. But what actually happens a lot too is, you know, is he actually going to be played? Is what I'm wondering, to be honest, because it's only boys. So we have his WAAAGH energy ability, where every 5 models, you have +1 to the strength and +1 to the damage for the Edbanger weapon, which is his psychic attacks. While the unit contains 10 or more, becomes a hazardous weapon. So if he's leading 20 boys, that's +4 strength, +4 damage. So that's a super big mega blast from his head, which is awesome to see. That's probably the more fun part of his options. But what's the realistic part of it, the probability of using it? Now, we do know that psychic does ignore the modifiers currently. That's understood, right? So that's a big deal that he can actually still hit on 4 if there's some kind of way to buff it. But as we know right now, he's going to be, not being tactical brigade, for example, give him +1 to hit, because I did that in the past. It was silly but dumb fun. Strength 6, -3, 1 damage. So not that impressive. And he is oddly a leader instead of support, so he's contesting with other proper leaders. The most interesting part about his ability that has changed is the jump, I guess, which is the jump psychic once per turn per army. In your movement phase, you can roll 1d6, and the result on a 1, you take d6 mortals. Fantastic. We all love that. You kept that. Thank you, GW. On a 2 to 6, you can put him in strategic reserve, and then he gains deep strike until the end of the phase. This unit can make an ingress move, including the first battle round. So repositioning, that can be pretty awesome in that way, that you get access to ingress. So maybe how the game plays, this could be an awesome ability, because you can set yourself up in cool spots and the enemy can't technically shoot you. Yeah, could be kind of nice. Could he jump up forward and do a surgical attack with a small 10-man unit of boys? Possibly. But we do actually have to see his point cost for his weird niche abilities and his weird niche position of being a leader. So there's still a lot to say about this guy. Odd to see that he's only with boys, and there's a lot to be said on his codex. So I do like to see his energy is fun and thematic. When you get the box, if you're a new player, have fun with blowing your friends up. That'll be fine. And we'll see if there's a lot more interesting stuff to be seen with him when the actual book drops. So for final thoughts, right? We gained good utility across the table. GW did not really do us dirty, which is what we're happy to see. And they gave us some buffs when they could have just let us stagnant and just let the book come out, right? So as much as I'd be poo-pooed GW sometimes, and I'm not always happy about stuff just like anybody else, I was happy that they gave us direct buffs now, because obviously there was something there to say that, Painboys were the same. They weren't going to change them. It's like, the Weirdboy is kind of the same. It's like they could have done that to everybody, but they didn't. Unknown changes for the detachments. So we don't know if some of these green tides going to come for the forefront and be awesome. Speed wall, cult of speed, or be awesome, or if something really drastically is going to change, and some of these characters aren't even really thought of because we end up using mechanized attachments or something, right? So just be happy with the models for what they are, what we have right now, until we get all the rules and have the points to determine everybody's true viability. Right. So that as much as I'm pumped of the options, we should definitely keep brainstorming. And of course, we don't know if something like a Burner Boy or a Luda is going to get a new box. And if they get a new box set, then there's a chance they get a new data sheet. And then suddenly your Burner Boys have a proper leader or someone that can hold the enhancement or do stuff like that. And you'll be happy that these guys are now an option when you weren't before with something like a Burner Boy's prior data sheet. And I'm talking about maybe a year from now, right? But that's why we should just stay positive, just to have options. So of course, one of the first codexes to release, that's why we're happy. Whenever a new edition drops, the Space Marines get theirs, and then we'll have ours. Now, GW has in the past let the ball drop and made people who start the edition some of the worst factions for the rest of the edition. They did make improvements to Tyranids. Tyranids were still hard to pilot for the most part, but they did make significant changes that made them strong in some competitive scenes by some specific players. So there were a bit of attention given back to them. And I think as long as orc players and the orc community, and of course I think GW, the whole community as a whole, will do this with all the incoming media and games, that orcs will get a lot of good push, and that will, you know, stay on their mind a little bit longer and not get left behind, like some people do assume we do with codex aging and power creep. So with that being said, I'm still having a great time and happy to see all of the stuff get stuck in with the Great Wall. And of course, we have our very generous 10 wall tacted gifted membership. Whoa, right? So I want to definitely give that shout out to Flynn, right? So thank you very much for that. You get as is very excited to see you too, and he's very excited for melee. Sustained is great. Stoked to see the points at release. Absolutely, that's what we really want to see, right? And getting up to T6 is cool for the orcs and fun breakpoints. And I think for starting players and such, getting more boys, being able to run these guys, you'll have a really fun time. And I think everybody is still pretty excited about all of these characters nonetheless, as we should be. So of course, if you think we did a great job and want to get stuck in, leave a like, subscribe. Welcome to the Great Wall. There's a lot left to get stuck in and learn, boys. I said stuck in 20 times. A lot left to learn, you guys, and ways to grow with the Great Wall. And I'm really happy that you all are here with us. So there's always one thing to keep in mind is don't cross our wall, because we'll not get T5.